welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to do a book review on this novel, Mysterious Skin by Scott Heim. Might be Scott Heim, might be Scott Heim. Scott H-E-I-M. My German background tells me that it should be Heim, but one never knows. Anyway, Mysterious Skin. This book was also made into a movie with Joseph Gordon-Levitt some years ago, and I really wanted to talk about this book a little bit more in depth. We covered it in a book haul last year, and I've read it, and I want to talk about it. So let's read the inside flap of Mysterious Skin. Opening in a small town in Kansas in 1981, and at a seemingly innocent Little League baseball game, this haunting debut novel explores ways people choose to interpret memory. At the age of 8, Brian Lackey is found bleeding under the crawl space of his house, having endured something so traumatic that he cannot remember an entire 5-hour period of time. During the following years, he begins to recall details of that night, but these fragments of memory are not enough to explain what happened to him. When he meets a woman who claims to have been abducted by a UFO, he begins to believe that he too has been the victim of an alien encounter. Neil McCormick is fully aware of the events of that summer in 1981. Wise beyond his years, curious about his developing sexuality, Neil found what he perceived to be love and guidance from his baseball coach. Now, 10 years later, he has become the town's pariah, a teenage hustler, a terrorist of sorts, unaware of the dangerous path of life his life is taking. His recklessness is governed by idealized memories of his coach, memories that unexpectedly change when Brian, searching for the missing time in his past, comes to Neil for help and, ultimately, the truth. Mysterious Skin by Scott Heim. Or Heim. I'm not really sure, and I feel terrible about that, not knowing. So, this book, it goes deep. This is not... This nor the movie are light reads, or views in that case, but they are important ones. They're very eloquent ones. This book's writing is just, it is so sharp that it feels like it's going to cut you while you're reading. It's clear and crisp and concise. Its plotting and pacing are phenomenal, and just the level of detail that it describes in this book will have you simultaneously squirming and then also wanting to dive deeper into these characters, which feels so very real. It's like you knew them when you were in high school or middle school or college, and you're getting to finally figure out what was kind of making them tick, and you want to know more. So it's very high praise, very good things. This deals with abuse, sexual abuse, and sexual assault, as well as sexuality and how one copes with assault, and the inside cover flap said, how you deal with memory and coping techniques in this. So there's a phrase that I love that says the difference between real life and fiction is that fiction has to make sense. I love that because life is so messy, and we do turn to stories to kind of make sense of them. But at the same time, I really love a story that manages to make itself more real by incorporating these sort of non sequitur left field sort of details that end up making such sense within the context of the story and what happens. I love it when this book really manages to make this a portrayal of what could be a very real existence, and it's wonderfully done. But part of that realistic detail and portrayal, I like how he relates sort of sexual assault with UFO abduction. I love that it's this entirely unexpected and uninvited encounter. I love that it leaves you feeling like something's been taken from you, something's missing, something's been done to you that is irrevocable, that perhaps only you can perceive and nobody else can, or nobody else will believe your perceptions. All the parallels you can draw between the two, I think that was genius. I love that on the surface of it, it looks like this kid just randomly meets this girl who thinks she's been abducted by aliens, and clearly that makes sense as to why he was found underneath his porch. But on a literary analyst sort of perspective, it also draws so many parallels to such a horrific event. And how I've always been, UFOs and aliens as a sideline have always been kind of a phobia of mine. But because it's the ultimate loss of control and not in complete, for lack of a better term, alien sort of experience where you don't understand what is happening to you, you didn't ask for it, you don't like it, you can't comprehend it, you can't talk about it, there's no language for it because they may speak a different language, if you will. And then it's very difficult to talk about afterward because of the disbelief, the belittling, the shame, the stigma. So this book definitely encompasses all of that in a realistic and intensely painful at times portrayal. And I also like how, again, because we turn to fiction to make sense of reality, how perhaps in real life this poor kid who was abused and left at home and left after it, so to speak, might have gone on believing that he really was abducted by aliens. I mean, that's sort of a real life story, if you will, of trying to make sense out of something that makes no sense. But of course, thankfully, we have this book and we have this fiction in the story. So he does meet Neil, who is struggling with an entirely different set of coping mechanisms and skills. Neil is coping with sexuality. He's gay, or thinks he is, acts as he's trying to figure out his sexuality. and as we all are at some point in our lives, whether it be very young or middle school, high school, or ongoing currently, it's an ongoing project, all things are completely as viable in the realm of human experience. But he's trying to figure it out. And I really like the issues that draws in about how men deal with sexual assault and abuse. And especially, I've read a few kind of books about men and being gay and sexual assault and abuse. There was one that I read called Men Like That, which actually deals with Southern culture and about this kind of how this horrific portrayal of how in Southern culture, and possibly other cultures, this one was just focusing on Southern culture, Southeastern United States, I should say, culture, how it's just kind of a accepted norm that at some point in a young boy's life, if they are gay, possibly even if they aren't, there's going to be an inappropriate interaction with an older family member who is also a man. And about how that really sets the basis for so much, because in a society that being homosexual is so stigmatized and inappropriate, because this was focusing on life from, I believe, about 1900 through, say, 1980. So definitely before the closet doors had been opened, so to speak, and in the dark ages. Definitely in the Southeast. So it's very stigmatized. So about the first and kind of only expression that they interact is with this person. So your first sexual encounter that kind of tells you, oh, hey, maybe this is my sexuality. Maybe this does play into my sexuality somehow, was with someone who was a family member who was taking advantage of you and abusing you. And then how you feel about that. Because at one point, at the same time, it opens a doorway to an understanding of yourself, but it is through a pathway of abuse. And how you try to cope with that and try to hold these concepts in your head of both, my sexuality is a real and viable and completely normal thing, but that was introduced to me by someone who is clearly in need of all kinds of help. So that definitely plays in here, because you've got the dynamic between Neil and his coach, and that's kind of what it did for him. He is lost in the world of, I enjoyed it, therefore does it make it abuse? And trying to figure out what it means to him and how all of this goes. And clearly the character is struggling with trying to somehow make sense of all the things that have happened to him, about someone who did take advantage and abused him, but yet opened his eyes to things about himself and what that means, and if he can ever overcome it. And he has put the coach up on a pedestal about this was kind of almost the ultimate sexual encounter, where he did feel loved and safe and cared for, as so often abusers seem to do with children. That's the first step, making them trust you and making them feel like they're doing this because they care about you. So what do you do with that? And that's it. So there's a lot of very intense, deep, moving, important, and horrifying themes in this book. It's very realistic. It's moving. I really recommend it. Obviously, this could be a very difficult read for some and a very difficult watch in the movie. I do have to say that I think his name is Joseph Gordon-Levitt. I kind of confuse Gordon and Joseph, whether which one's his first name. Forgive me. But that actor, who's also in Inception, and I don't know if I've seen him in anything bad, quite frankly. But he plays Neil, and it's a good watch. It's a very memorable watch, and does a very accurate portrayal, I feel, of the character in the book. So, should you be looking for a very intense but very important and mind awakening and also thought provoking read, I highly recommend Mysterious Skin by Scott Heim by Scott Heim. Very good. I know he's written a couple of other things. Not too many, sadly. Because always when somebody is good at what they do, you want more. But definitely interested in reading other things that he's done. Thank you so much for putting this work out into the world. Thank you to all the artists and creators who continue to do so. Thank you to all the viewers and everyone out there for being you and for the experiences you add to this world. So very grateful for each and every one of you. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope you have a wonderful day. And in the name of the story, I'll talk to you later.